Hello everybody, it's Stephen and Walter here for this week's episode of So Chatty, episode number 37 for December the 3rd, 2021. Hope everybody had a good week. And today what we thought we'd do is sort of look at the comments that we've been getting over the last several of our videos, not just the So Chatty, but on some of the other ones, the Idiot Quilter and our lives and things like that, and react to them or answer the questions. Now, we really do appreciate your questions when they come in, and we do try to answer all of them when we can. And, well, we want to talk a little bit about what the problem is sometimes when people ask us questions. And this isn't criticism. We've asked you to, if you've got questions, by all means, put them in the comments below. But there are some questions that people are what seems they're looking for are some very definitive answers. And we hesitate about giving definitive answers because, as you know, because we've said it before, this episode, or these episodes in So Chatty, or when I do the Idiot Quilter, or when we do Stephen and Walter Live, or anything that we put up here, our comments are based upon our experiences. They are not written in stone. Many people have many opinions about many of these topics we talk about, and that is not to say that we are to the definitive statement about them. We could actually be wrong. And that's why we hesitate in certain situations to answer questions and make it sound like we're some kind of experts, because we're not. We just know what we know from what we've experienced.
We're just a couple of normal people that sew sometimes.
Yeah. A lot of times.
A lot of times. And we have experiences, and we don't say we're an expert or anything like that,
because we're not.
We're just throwing out our observations, and then if somebody else has different observations or different ideas, they can put it in the comments, and we can answer or look into stuff like that if we have to. But we can't just pull something from the top of our head and say, yeah, we can answer your question type of thing.
So, one thing we need to clarify, and I thought it was very obvious, but I think for some people isn't that obvious. We are not dealers in sewing or quilting equipment at all.
No.
We are not experts, as I've already said about this. We have experimented quite a bit. We have learned a lot of things from our mistakes, and we do a lot of research, and that's key. And what were you going to say?
Well, we also do not repair sewing machines.
No.
We don't have any expertise in repairing sewing machines, much more than just basic common sense and basic maintenance, but that's about it.
And what we've learned, as I said, from our experience. But by no means it's definitive. Now, why are we bringing this up right now at this point? Well, this stems from several comments that we've gotten over the last few weeks. Some people have found some of my older Idiot Quilter videos where I talked extensively about some of my machines, some of the problems I have with machines, some of the things that I've done with my machines. And they've asked for my advice as to what they should buy. Well, that isn't an easy question to answer, because what would be good for you may not be good for me, and vice versa. It also depends on how much money you have, what you want to spend, what you're going to do with the equipment you buy. So to be a little bit more specific, one person wanted to know which machine she should buy in embroidery. Should she buy a 500 or should she buy a 550E by Janome? Both are Janome machines. Both are embroidery machines. In my opinion, both machines are good machines for the money you're going to spend on them. They're not cheap machines. They range in price from $3,000 to $5,000, depending, and I'm talking all in Canadian dollars, of course, because we are Canadian. So it's, people are trying to get the biggest bang for their buck, and I definitely get that, because who doesn't? But my opinion is that, I asked the person, what is it you want to do? And it seemed the only criterion this person had, the thing that was really bothering her and trying to make the decision, was that the only difference she saw between the two machines is that the 550E came with a bigger hoop, one other hoop that was bigger. And I think she was probably, and she said it was $1,000 difference between the two machines. I haven't looked that up. That
Well,
seems like
actually,
a really big spread.
actually, not. Yeah. What the thing is with okay, we're not dealers and we're
Yeah.
not experts, but I have done some research, and I know that at the time I purchased my 550E, the 5000 was just being phased out.
Yeah.
Right. So the 550,
500.
the 500. Oh, sorry, 500. The Janome 500 E
Embroidery
or
machine.
whatever was just being phased out. That was about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. Or is it a year and a half ago?
Yeah, it's been about 2 years, I think.
Yeah, okay. And I asked at that time the dealer, okay, what's the difference between the two machines? And basically the only difference was, well, actually the only differences that I could find anyway was that the 550E came with a larger hoop than the 500 did. And it had a few different files, like embroidery files, that it came standard with the machine, which isn't really a biggie. If you look, actually, I've seen the two machines together. If you look at them, the embroidery bar is shorter on the 500 than the 550E, and that's because it doesn't need to accommodate a bigger hoop. Anyway, so if she's looking at buying a 500 right now or a 550E, the 550E would be probably a brand new machine, whereas the 500 would either be a used machine or old stock.
Yeah.
And that's why there would be a big spread in the price
Difference in the price.
In fact, probably the machine she's looking at a 500 more than likely is a demonstrator or lightly used machine or something.
It could be. Or whatever. But also, I still question the spread of $1,000 between the two machines. Now, I haven't looked them up to see what the manufacturer's retail price is on the two of them.
Well, when I purchased the 550E, and they were phasing out the 500, I got the 550E at an introductory price, which was $500 more Canadian than what a brand new 500 would cost. So it now, like I said, if they're not really making the 500 anymore, if she happens to be getting old stock or something like that. Plus the new, I know that the new embroidery machines are a little bit more, the 550s are a little bit more expensive than what I paid for it because I got it at the introductory price. So right now I think it's about I got it for a certain price. It's about $300 more now if you buy a brand new one than when I bought it. So then the spread becomes $800 between the two.
But either way, and I'm not sure where this person was looking for the machine. I think she was talking to a dealer, but I'm not absolutely sure about that. And if she isn't, she should be, because I would not buy an expensive sewing machine of any kind directly online. Because you need to go in and you need to talk to somebody who knows about these machines. But regardless of that, it seemed to me that the extra money was a bit of a stretch for her. I get that. And she was trying to rationalize that she would probably never use the bigger hoop. That could be, depending on what she's going to embroider. A lot of people buy an embroidery machine and they think of it more from the point of view of garment making. They want to put a decorative logo or something on the pocket of a shirt or something on the back of a jacket or something like that. And for applications like that, yeah, you probably don't need the hugest of the huge hoops. However, what if you do? Because more and more projects are coming out that are called in the hoop projects. Like you can make entire tote bags or things like that in the hoop on an embroidery machine. And that's great, but you need a larger hoop to do that. Some people are looking at embroidery machines as a way to do a form of computerized quilting on a small quilt or even a large quilt. And it is sort of possible, but that's a discussion for another day. And I've already have videos about the pros and cons of all of that. But nevertheless, you need a bigger hoop to be able to do something like that. So if you can afford the money, I don't think you would regret having a machine with the biggest hoop as you can possibly get or you can afford.
Yeah, like we even have a friend that actually bought a used 500E and does garment sewing. And he said, well, it has a much larger hoop than I would ever use, right? And then I said to him a little while ago, I said, so did you ever use the bigger hoop? The bigger hoop that the 500 had. And he goes, oh, yeah, all the time, lots of times. Because he says, I didn't realize how much, what size of embroidery I would end up doing. And he said, I always assumed I'd just do a little embellishment on a pocket or something like that. But he's finding out now that, yes, he's using the larger hoop much more often.
And another thing, too, what some people don't realize is they'll get a design, and it'll come up on your machine. If it's a Janome machine, it'll come up and tell you what hoop it's recommending that you use with that design. Well, it might come up, for example, with the 550E, there is an optional hoop that you can buy that doesn't come with the machine. And there are some patterns you get, or I've had, where it's asking for that hoop. But that's okay, because I've got a bigger hoop that came with my machine than this particular one. It's kind of I don't know why they have that hoop.
Well, no, because it was the largest hoop that the 500 could handle. And so the 550E can handle that size hoop and something bigger.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of these older files still come up using that hoop.
Yeah. But the thing is, I don't have to worry about that. I can use the bigger hoop that came with my machine to accommodate for that particular pattern. There's also an advantage to having bigger hoops. If you want to do multiple projects that are smaller, say, like for me, for example, Christmas time, last year I was making these freestanding angels, which are Christmas decorations, and I was giving them as gifts. Well, they're about this big, each one. They might be about 3-4 inches square in size. And so it calls for the smaller hoop. But I was making one at a time. But that was, meant I had to keep putting in stabilizer each time, unload the hoop, and do all that kind of stuff. And that eats up more time. So I used a bigger hoop, and you have the ability to make multiple designs in one hoop if it's big enough. And I did that. So I wasn't constantly, okay, it's now done on that one. I have to go and I have to rehoop everything again to make my next one. I could do 6 of these suckers in the biggest hoop as opposed to one at a time with it. So there is an advantage to having as big a hoop as you can afford to buy with the machine you're going to buy with it. Now, some people will say, well, I don't want to do that because then I'm wasting stabilizer. And yes, stabilizer is expensive, or I'm wasting fabric or whatever. Well, okay. Yes, you might be. But again, it depends. If you can make one, make two or whatever.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, so
get right in there.
No, I'm just sort of saying that so I can't make the decision for this lady.
No.
As to which machine she should buy. Both machines are good machines. Both machines do pretty much the same thing. One has a larger hoop than the other hoop.
Yeah.
One has a larger final hoop than the other hoop. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on how much that $1,000 means to you, right? And I was debating when I purchased mine whether to go for the older model or the newer model because I wasn't sure about the hoop size. But I thought, okay, fine, I'm just going to buy the one with the bigger hoop. And I'm glad I did because there have been a few designs that have come up that require the bigger hoop. Yeah. And I'm glad I've got it.
So, and that's the other point is sometimes some people are asking our advice on this kind of thing. And it's like they want us to make the decision for them. And I can't do that. I'm not making a decision for somebody. And I've already said the reasons why I can't make that decision. But the other thing, too, is I think sometimes people they want to hear somebody else make a definitive statement and say, this is what you should buy. Then if it doesn't work out for you, though,
you can blame them.
You can blame them. And I'm not going to play that game, okay? And I'm not saying that the person that was asking this question is playing a game or anything. But how do you make the decision? You got to do some research, okay? And this goes for anything you're going to purchase, okay? It doesn't matter whether it's sewing equipment, a television set, whatever. If you've got a big investment in a piece of equipment, it pays to do the time to research about that product. Look at what other people are saying. Look at the reviews on something. Like on Amazon, if you go to the bottom of the page on something that you're looking at, you'll find reviews. Read the reviews. See what people are saying about the products. I mean, you have to take those with a grain of salt at times too, some of the comments that are there. But you got to do your research and really think about it. And if it's a big piece of equipment, I wouldn't buy it online unless you know everything you need to know about it. You need to go to some place that deals with this and ask the people.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, if you're buying a sewing machine, we've said this many times before, if you're buying a sewing machine and you're buying a substantial sewing machine, don't go out to a dealer and buy your sewing machine there, because at least then you have some support. And even check with the dealer that you're dealing with to see if they will give you support, because there's some dealers out there that just don't do that. So, but I mean, we're not talking about a dealer like go to Best Buy and buy a sewing machine at Best Buy because they sell TV sets and everything else, or appliances and stuff. Go to a sewing machine dealer that just sells sewing machines. Yeah, and just sells one or two brands.
It's a specialized item.
Don't go to don't go to a big box store and just buy a sewing machine because you figure that that's a dealer. Yeah, that's not a dealer, that's a store.
Yeah, they don't fix them there. But anyways,
don't buy it online.
No, and we've talked all about this many times before, so we're getting a little off topic now. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to your questions, when you ask us stuff, take what we take or what we say, not with a grain of salt, because we wouldn't tell you anything to mislead you. But we don't know everything.
And now some people may buy something secondhand too, like from somebody else. And if you do that, if you go that route, then you may be buying a machine that has a problem with it or something like that you're not aware of. Or the other thing is check to make sure that there is a dealer in your area that if something does go wrong with that particular machine, that there's a dealer or a sewing repair place that can deal with the machine that you're buying. Yeah, because it will break down. Any machine will. Right now, my embroidery machine is not here. I have a problem with the thread cutter. It's my Janome 550E with it. And there's a part they need to get for it. It happens. Okay, I'm not going to get into details about what really happened with it, but it does happen. So, but luckily I have an excellent dealer right here in my own town that I can go to. Anyways, that brings us to other people's comments and things. And I printed out some of these and I'm going to read parts of them to you or whatever. I am not going to identify the people who have written them. And this is not a criticism of anybody, and I hope it doesn't come across in cases that we're being critical. We're not. We're going to try to answer these questions or react to them in a very honest way, because that's what we're all about here. We're not here to take anybody down the garden path. There's no advantage to us to do that. Well, not only that, the other thing is don't take offense if we've read your comment or anything.
And don't think that we're thinking negative of you or something. We're not. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the questions. So this one was based on a couple of weeks ago, November 16th. We did, I did, under my musings section, the Idiot Quilter Presents Musings, I said, should I sell my quilts? And one person wrote this. Excellent discussion. And this person came up with some ideas. Keep an album of the process, a few photos along the way of each quilt you make. Once a year, evaluate them. When you start running out of space, keep 10. Donate one. You determine the number, but that is my number. I like the charity route. There are so many worthwhile charities that would gladly make use of a quilt. Sometimes they might use it as a fundraiser and raffle it. Sometimes they're given to people in need. If you decide to go on the route and present trunk shows, you really need around 30 quilts to use as demos. So then evaluate what you have kept. Evaluate what you have, keep 35, donate some. Every year rotate. Keep the 30 to 35 you like best. Last thing I will add are they part of your will? I have many friends with stashes, unfinished quilts, and completed quilts. Some of my friends have told their families where they want these items to go. Others will leave it up to whoever is clearing the house. Make your legacy count. Okay, there's several points that made me focus on this comment here. This came up because I'm looking at my ton of quilts that I have made in the last, well, going on 4 years now that I started quilting. And they're basically, when I'm done with a quilt, they sit in the guest bedroom, folded up on the bed, on the guest bed, or in our rec room on a chair, kind of a thing, all folded up. I don't get them out and look at them every day. We're not really using them because we have one bed, that we sleep in. Like, how many quilts does one need? There's a quilt already on that bed as well. I have a very small family, and I am giving them some quilts this Christmas, my nephew and niece and that. And I've given one to Walter's nephew and his wife and that back a while ago. But what am I going to do with them? So I need to do something, and I am now looking at the possibility of charities for all of this. I like the idea of keeping pictures of your process, which actually I have been doing as well. I wasn't going to because I'm a scrapbooker. I was a scrapbooker at one point in time. I was thinking of making a scrapbook with the pictures and things like that, but I've decided against that. But what I am doing is I'm keeping them on my computer, pictures of them, so I know what I have. And I do keep a little journal that every time I finish a quilt, I write down the date they finished it, what the quilt was called, and that kind of thing. So I do have a record. Trunk shows, I can't see myself doing a trunk show per se because, well, I associate trunk shows with people who get called in by guilds to talk about stuff. And
well, you don't really do any kind of, you don't go around and talk to people.
Well, nobody would want to listen to me about that. Well, here we are talking, but I show my quilts here on my channel, of course. But I don't really do a trunk show, but that's something. But I like the idea of what she's saying is evaluate what you have, basically decide what you cannot give away, what you want to keep, and the other stuff, find homes for them, I think is what she's really saying here. Now, the last part about the will is very interesting because I'd never thought of that. Quite frankly, I don't think anyone in my family will want any of my fabric or any of my other stuff because they're just not into this kind of thing. And I really don't know anybody else that probably would. So I don't know. They'll probably find their way in a thrift store or something down the road or who knows what. But that is a very interesting point. Like putting something like that in your will, people spend, and I'm one of those people, thousands of dollars on fabric. And, serious quilters, serious sewers have stashes. And it's a lot of fabric. So it is something to consider. So anyways, I just thought there were some interesting ideas in that one. Another one where, in the same vein, all right, that was the same one. Never mind. Oh yeah, okay, so I did, on the Idiot Quilter Presents Musings, I did a thing about male quilters. This was on November the 23rd. And one person wrote, "Hi, Stephen. Sorry to hear you had a bad experience with the Quilting Guild. My brother-in-law, who's a pilot, sews leather jackets and bags. When I first found out about it, I thought it was so cool. Men have been involved in textiles for years as fashion or fabric designers. It's natural progression for men to be involved in sewing or quilting." This comment was generated from the fact that I had alluded to an experience that I had. I had a bad experience with a guild that I joined. It was basically a woman's only club. I was the only guy in the group. And there were a few ladies. Most of them were fine. Most of them were not a problem at all. But there were a few ladies in the more controlling part of the guild, the executive, who basically had a real hate on for me. I don't know why. I think they may have felt threatened. I was, the Fox in the Hen House or something. I don't know what was on there. They asked me to join the executive to be the secretary. I never volunteered for that. I got volunteered. I did the job that I was supposed to do. But anyways, there's a lot more to the story, and I'm not going to get into it because I actually have gotten into it back about a year ago or so on the Idiot Quilter. So it's there somewhere in the archives. But as men, we get mixed reactions. Men are getting very much more involved in the textile arts. There's YouTube channels by guys for knitting. There's ones for quilters. There's sewers. There's always been men in sewing. They called them tailors. Stuff like that. Fashion designers, the whole bit. Most times, I don't know, women are pretty good about it. I mean, I've never had any problem in a quilt store, only once, and that was minor. And that was just because I think it was more or less, it wasn't so much I was a male, it was so much like, it was a small store in a small town, and they were used to knowing everybody, and I walked in, and they didn't know what to do with me. At first. They're fine now. But I have only with my guild did I ever have that problem. And yes, it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I won't join another guild. Not for a while, if ever. I would much rather join a men's guild. And actually, I do belong to a men's group, which is online. And it's men only. And that's fine. So the ladies can stay where the ladies are, and the men can stay where they are. I don't know. Another person wrote, I'm sorry for your dismissal experiences in quilting with women. Believe it or not, women are mean to other women too. And there are other venues where men can be pretty snarky to downright scary. Okay, I take exception to that comment. I don't know where a man would be snarky and downright scary in something that had a lot of women participating in it. Yes, there are assholes in the world.
Now, mind you, sometimes if a woman makes a snarky comment to you, and then you make a snarky
then the man's the snarky one. Yeah, I've known that. Yeah, that's very true. I'm sorry to say it. It sounds very sexist, but women can dish it out. They can't always take it. No, I know. I'm going to get comments about that, and you're going to say, well, men can be just like that too. And yes, they can. So I mean, there's problems on both sides of the spectrum.
There's personality differences no matter who you're dealing with. I know of my own experiences where I used to work in a mixed business, and or most businesses are mixed, where women treat other women poorly in a business, and then some women don't like some of the male co-workers, and some think male co-workers are great. So
I think
it depends.
I think it has to do with the approach. And again, I'm being hesitant about what I say here because it borderlines on sounding sexist. But speaking of sexist, women are sexist too. Okay, you don't often hear this. You hear about men being sexist, about men putting women down, about men keeping control over women for centuries and centuries and centuries. And I'm not saying any of that is not true. It is true. It is very, very true. But in this modern day and age of political correctness, of awareness, of, women being very well educated, doing, any kind of job out there, the roles are no longer clearly defined between what sexes should be doing and not, which is all, I think, very progressive in the way we should be going. But I've watched how women handle situations with other women, and they tend to be bitches. They tend to be backstabbing. They will say all kinds of things behind someone's back, a woman's back, but to their face, they're as nice as anything. When you deal with a man, and not in all cases, but men tend to be much more direct. A man will say to another man, he's got a problem with that guy. And they may or may not work it out one way or another. But usually, I'm being very hesitant about this because I know someone out there is going to know of an example where this is not the case at all. Men will be much more direct. A woman won't always be as direct. Now, that could come from, at least with a man, but I've seen it with women too. I mean, I worked in an environment that was primarily women as a teacher. Okay? There were more females on staff than there were males. And I watched how they interacted with each other, how they interacted with me, how they interacted with other males in the department. And it was very different from the way the males interacted. So I don't know.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation in the business that I was in. I was in software development, and there are lots of males and lots of females, and actually there's lots of different nationalities as well in this kind of environment. And I've seen what Steve's saying: poor interactions between women, poor interactions between women and men, or vice versa, interactions, and male on male interactions in situations. And in all those cases, it varies from person to person and personality to personality.
However, I was the head of my department, and I would approach a female member of my department about an issue totally different than I would approach a male. And I did that because I could go to a male and I could say, okay, look, Joe, here's the situation we've got. We've got a problem. We need to solve it. And the problem is, and usually the problem was with that person because there had been a complaint from a parent or an administrator, and because I was the head, I had to deal with it. But I could be very direct with that person. With a woman, I could not be that way. I had to play it totally differently because, one, I would be accused of being sexist if I approached them in the same way I would approach a man, or it would be reduced to an emotional level, or I was picking on them. So I had to, or my word choice, I had to be very careful about my word choice. I had to be very politically correct. And it was a fine line with that. So, yeah, the sexes are not equal, okay, in everything. We approach things differently. And I mean, I think we need to accept that. So if we bring this back into this came from the whole idea of male quilters and that. I'll give you an example. When I'm on a sew day with the men's group, it's very different than when I'm in a sew day with the women's group. There's less conversation with the men. The women, there's lots of conversation. The men seem to get right down and they make decisions. You don't hear the men saying, I don't know what color I should use this. What do you think? And doing a poll with everybody. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, okay? The women will look for more suggestions for things than men do. But sometimes you think it's kind of goes back to that first discussion we're having about the embroidery machine. It's like they're looking for someone to make the decision for them. Okay, you're going to bring it on. I know you are, because there's no way I can talk about this without sounding sexist.
And the males often talk about current events and things like that, and they don't really necessarily talk about their projects. They just talk about general things.
The women tend to talk about topics that are more family oriented, like their grandchildren or what their children are doing and things like that. So there is differences between the sexes. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just the way it is. So, yeah. Now, this person went on to say, often the group has already started and established cliques, or longtime friends go together and do not want to know anyone else. They're talking about guilds. Maybe the bitchy ones, that's what the person wrote, ones are just wired that way and we just have to ignore them. I'm 10 years minus 2 weeks ahead of you on this, and age can let the crappy bits wash over you and you can get out of your experience what you want and discard the nonsense. I went through as much of the sticks and stones things throughout childhood, through my design work with contractors, truck drivers, drapery installers, and sometimes with clients. And now I'll go through it with a whole different group. The only difference is I don't give a damn. I'm retired. And I like the last part about it. And I think what they're saying is, really? Does it matter? Pick the mountain you want to die on.
Well, I think the problem that you experienced in your guild is the fact that you ended up in the executive.
Yeah.
And if you had not done the executive stuff, you might still be in it because you may not have.
Yeah.
You may not have encountered the stuff that you got with the executive.
No, that's very true. Yeah, but it did leave a bad taste in my mouth, and well, it makes me think twice about it in the future. Okay. Comments from Shop Until You Drop Dead from COVID from my vlog of November 22nd. I was talking in there about the fact that, now we're into the season, coming into the Christmas season. People are out buying gifts and shopping. The shopping malls are not doing anything to really deter people from coming in. Yes, there are restrictions, there's rules, things like that. But, it's still a lot of people, and COVID's not over. Okay, although you do hear an awful lot of people talk about it in the past tense, which it's still here. It's not over. But one person from the UK wrote, here in the UK, shop workers cannot do anything about people not wearing masks. They can receive abuse from people who want everyone to wear a mask and everyone who don't want to wear masks. Shop workers are not policemen. Yeah, so basically I think I made the comment that our government here in Ontario has not made it easy for shop owners. They're basically making the shop owners into the police. Instead of saying that province-wide, all of this is absolutely mandatory, you can't go anywhere unless you're double vaxxed and you have to prove it. And they're not giving guidelines or good, firm guidelines or policies for the shop owners. They're leaving a lot of it up to them to make the decision. So they're putting them between a rock and a hard place, right? Because they need the business. They don't want to alienate their clientele, but at the same time, they have to keep their employees and the other customers safe. So what do? So yeah, and they do receive a lot of abuse from people coming in, especially in restaurants, from what we have heard as well. People go in there and they have a couple of drinks and they have the masks down and the whole bit. And, if someone comes over to them and asks them, would you mind, when you're not taking it or you're not eating, to have your mask on or whatever. And they may get into a conflab with that. I mean, we were in a bakery yesterday and I noticed a sign they had. And it said, and it was in big capital letters right at their checkout, which they had big sheets of plexiglass in and everything. And they said, you must wear your mask so it covers your nose, your mouth, and tightly fits around your chin. You may not take your mask down to use your phone to pay for something. You know how, your face ident kind of a thing. And then they're probably using Apple Pay or something like that with it. So there's a problem, right? I could see somebody go, well, if you want to get paid, I have to do this because I can't access my phone. And they said anybody not following these rules will be basically ushered out of the store. I thought that was pretty firm, what they had there. And I admire them for it. And people say, well, how am I going to pay for it? I do everything by Apple Pay or whatever. I need my phone.
Well, I think you can still put in your password.
Yeah, you probably can. And all that kind of stuff. I mean, but what I'm saying is they're taking a firm stand. And I'll bet you they've had a few people in there that have given them a hard time with that kind of thing. So I thought this comment about the UK, they're basically saying the same thing. The UK isn't taking a strong enough stand either.
I don't know if it's in your list. There was one that I had thought about that pertains more to sewing. That somebody had commented on.
What was that? Well, I don't know if it is.
Well, no, it was a while back, or other times you've had people come on and say, well, can you tell me the difference between a 6700, Janome 6700 and a 6650?
Oh,
or something
yeah.
like that, right?
No.
Well, that goes back to we're not dealers, right? I've never used a 6650, so I don't know the difference between the 6650
Yeah.
and the 6700. I have a 6700, so I know how it works. Now I can look up the manual and figure out what the difference is, but the other person that's asking that question can do exactly
They
that.
can do the same thing too.
Right? And that's what you have to do when you buy a machine. You have to do research. You can't just expect people like us to automatically say, "Oh yeah, I can tell you the difference between the two," because
We don't know.
we don't sell these machines, so we don't know. Maybe somebody that sells the machines can say, "Yeah, this is the difference," or mechanically can tell you what the difference is. It's also, you've had a few comments about, well, what's the difference between owning like this Janome machine and a FAF model or a Bernina model? Again, we only know the Janome. We don't know the FAF or the
No.
Bernina ones and stuff like that.
And I guess we try to be polite about it, but we're not your research.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
We're not doing the research for
I could
you.
look it up, and actually I did in one case look up the 60, I think either the 6500 or 6650 model, which is the model before mine, that came before mine, and I sort of looked at the manual, compared the manuals together, and figured out that they were pretty much the same, except one was the newer model and the other one was the older model. But somebody else could have done that too.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not the person that's supposed to do the research for your purchases, right? So
some people are just lazy when it comes to research. And yeah, I mean, okay, they might think seriously that we do have all the answers, and wow, easy. We have an expert right here that we watch their YouTube channel, and they can give us all the answers we want. And we've already said we can't because we don't know everything. But some don't take no for an answer. I've had a few where I've answered the question from my experience. Well, then they've come back to me and they start a debate. Well, what about this or that? And like, I have found this and that. Well, I don't want to carry on a dialogue about this issue because I've given you all the information I know. It comes from my experience. I've told you everything. I'm not holding anything back when I tell you that. So, glean from what we say that is of help. The stuff that you don't agree with or you don't think is helpful, find somebody else that knows more. YouTube's wonderful. Everything you ever wanted to know and more can be found on YouTube. Really. In fact, that's where we get most of our information from, is YouTube. So anyways, that was a diversion from that whole comment about the mask business. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting that where we live is not the only place where there's no leadership. It's happening all over the place. The leaders have let us down more than anything. So we had on a So Chatty episode a couple of weeks ago, we said, should we start a business? Now somebody, I think, told us point blank, no, you don't want to do that. Well, we kind of did say we're not going to do that with it. And we spent a whole lot of time explaining why we weren't going to do that. But one person wrote, I once had a stranger ask me if I'd custom knit a sweater for his child. When I explained that after materials and my time in creating a pattern and knitting a sweater, it would be easily over $150. I think that's cheap. For a kid that was going to grow out of it in a year or two. He wasn't interested anymore. That being said, one of the reasons I love crafting is because I can create unique customized gifts. But that has to be projects I'm interested in for people I love. Every commission I've ever done, even hemming pants, has been stressful, miserable, and just a way to earn a bit extra to buy nicer supplies for myself. I would consider selling things I've made and I'm not going to use anymore. I've even given some garments I've made to thrift shops, but commissions or production purely for the sale ruins the hobby. One thing you didn't mention, people underselling at craft shows or on Etsy ruin it for other makers. People who are willing to make something and sell it at a cost or even at a loss cheapen the value of handmade in the eyes of the public. I thought that was a very interesting statement because that's true, which brings up the whole point as to why do people sell things on Etsy if they're not making a reasonable profit for their time in that? For fame?
Possibly.
I don't think anybody gets famous on Etsy.
Or did they really make it?
Well, okay, well maybe that's a good point. Maybe they
Did
have
they
an
buy
outlet.
something that looks like handmade and get it from some sweatshop somewhere or another?
That's a possibility too. Personally, I won't buy anything from Etsy. I just don't trust buying things on Etsy. Now, maybe there are some of you out there that buy on Etsy all the time. You've had great experiences. I've never had a bad experience, but that's because I don't buy anything on Etsy. Well, that's a lie. I think I have bought a couple of things, but they were things that I could download. They weren't actual physical items. And they might have been a pattern or something like that with it. And I got immediate download. So, okay, something like that, I
Or is
suppose.
it possibly somebody that maybe works for a fabric store that buys or that manages to get freebies like the end cuts of rolls and stuff like that, and so their material's free, so they just make items out of it to sell or something like that.
Well, that is a possibility too, I suppose. I mean, okay, that's just good business in a way. That's what do retail businesses do? They buy their stuff from wholesalers or whatever.
Yeah.
Then they have a markup and all that kind of stuff.
So someone's getting maybe someone's getting material at a much reduced rate than what the average
Yeah.
person's getting, or somehow they have a source where they're getting that stuff from, and they like to do they're doing it to make a few extra dollars or
Yeah.
whatever or something.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, if you can get your supplies at a cheaper price, I mean, there's such a thing as a vendor's license. And that's where these people that go to these craft shows, they have a vendor's license and they pick up their stuff at wholesale.
They dumpster dive in a
Dumpster
in
dive.
in a fabric store or
Oh,
something.
maybe. Ooh, hey, there's an idea. There's videos about dumpster diving. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But I think what she's saying here too is what we already had said as well. People aren't willing to spend the money on something that's handmade. And I mean, for you to make a profit, I've just finished reading Jenny Doan's book, Stitching an American Dream, or How to Stitch an American Dream. It's well worth the read because she talks about how her family ended up with the Missouri Star Quilt Company and how difficult it was at the very beginning. They didn't know what they were doing and how to make a profit. She basically, her son talked her into buying a long arm machine, and they rented out an old garage that was in town that was basically abandoned, and she intended to just do custom quilting for people on the long arm, and it grew from there. But she talks about going to Quilt Market, which is like for people who own stores, to go and see what the latest lines of fabrics are and to put in orders for that. But they order thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars of fabric. She said they had about $2,000 to spend, and that was it. And they realized when they got there, no, this was big league. But it's a very interesting read about what she did, because people probably think that the Missouri Star Quilt Company is an overnight success thing, and it wasn't. It was a lot of trial and error, and it took them a long time to get to the point where they could hire staff and make a profit as well. But I think a lot of people who go into selling homemade stuff think they're going to make a lot of money, and then they probably realize very quickly people aren't going to spend that.
Or they get disenchanted after a while that their stuff isn't making the money they want. But there are people out there willing to pay money for stuff, because I went on just out of curiosity this week to Holt Renfrew, which is a high-end store in Canada. And it looks like they sell men's shirts anywhere from $500 to $900 or over. So,
well, you see, you need to brand your name.
Yeah, I know.
Wally wear.
Yeah.
Wally shirts. I don't know. Yeah. Walter makes something. I don't know. But we talked about that when we were talking about should we start a business. That really the people that get the big bucks are the companies that have established a name, and they've got more. It's not just based upon what they sell, what the quality of their product. It's based on how good their PR is and their advertisements and all that kind of stuff. And that costs a lot of money to have that kind of publicity. Now, from a point of view of YouTube channel, I think some people think that there's a lot of money to be made by having YouTube channel. And for some people there is, but you need to have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of views on one of your videos. And you have to have a subscriber base that has thousands and thousands of people coming to it repeatedly. And this comments from one person says, when my hubby and I started our YouTube channel, we decided we would run this as a business right from the start, but we would quit if it got too stressful. We already have run a successful IT business that the hubby is semi-retired from, so the YouTube channel is supposed to be fun. I'm going to suggest to you and Walter that you make a promise to each other about the acceptable level of stress you both would put up with before you walk away from your business. At our age, the last thing we need is stress. Sending hugs to you and Walter. Okay, so this person has a YouTube channel, and it's like ours. It's small potatoes kind of a thing. But a lot of people, I never went into making YouTube videos when I started making them. Would you quit doing that? It's annoying. You picked up on the microphone.
Okay.
He's taking his feet and rubbing them on the
I've
desk.
got to do something. I'm bored when you're yapping.
Well, you could just jump right in. You usually do.
Well,
Cripes. Hey, I wonder if I could sell you. Well, probably wouldn't get anything. You'd have to pay people to take you away. Anyways, when I started the YouTube channel back about 10 years ago, and that, making money from it was never my desire. It was just a hobby. It still is. Do I make money on YouTube? No. I have advertisements, but everybody has advertisements now because YouTube recently said it didn't matter whether you were monetized, they call it, or not. They're sticking sticking advertisements on you. And I average...
Well, technically, you don't make money because you do get some money from YouTube.
Yeah, I get...
But you spend more money to make your videos.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I make about $100
a month.
A month,
yeah.
If I'm lucky. And now they tax me. So they take 30% of whatever
I
make.
More like $70.
Yeah, it's more like 70. Like big bucks, not. Now, yeah, the ones that have 1 million viewers, subscribers, and that stuff, yeah, they're making big bucks. And I wonder how they're getting around the tax thing. I don't know. They've got probably have people working for them that do. If you're that big, that's their job. But yeah, you don't make money on YouTube, really. Not the average person. Then another person said, personally, I make quilts to give away to friends and family, to those who don't expect it. I love all the stages of quilting, from choosing the pattern, finding the perfect fabric, cutting and piecing, and finally the quilting. I would not enjoy it if I felt obliged or had to meet a deadline for a customer.
It's just like doing long arming for somebody else. It would be stressful.
Well, if you're charging money for something, I mean, my way of thinking is then you want to give people a quality product. And, you know, the customer's always right. And even when they're not. And that could give you a real headache. So, yeah, how to kill a hobby. Start trying to make money from it. And then another person says, I once did crocheted Afghans for my brothers and sisters-in-laws. One ended up in the dog's bed. Needless to say, they're on my list of never make again list. And this was all part of when I was saying, what should I do with my quilts, kind of a thing. And somebody told me once that when you give a quilt away, it is no longer your quilt. That person, it belongs to that person. They can do with it whatever they want to do with it. So I guess the trick is only give a quilt to somebody or something you've made to someone that you know will appreciate that. So, in other words, don't waste your time trying to give. It's like cards. When I was a scrapbooker and that in paper crafting, I used to make cards, and I'd make cards for people. But you know what happens with cards, right? You know, you buy a card for somebody, you send it to them, like say a Christmas card. And it sits out for a couple of weeks or a couple of days or whatever, you know, as part of the decor. And then when you're taking down the Christmas decorations, where do those cards go? Some people save them. I used to be one of those people that save them. And eventually I just threw them all out. Because, why? You know, well, cards are expensive to buy. They're even more so to make. Because there's your time. So, any of my friends that make cards or major into card making, they only give them to people who they know will appreciate the time and the effort and the creativity that went into it. Well, the same with a quilt, or same with if you make clothes or something like Walter shirts and things like that. You don't want it ended up as a dog bed unless you purposely made it for a dog. And you can do that. But yeah, I get the point there. Um, Other people, one was very says, don't do it, meaning don't go into business for yourself. Enjoy your retirement. Remember why you retired. Just saying. But if you do, the only I'll give you about quilting or sewing for customers is to get paid up front. Oh, and no refunds. And she's got an aside here. Amazon has led people to believe returns don't hurt the business. Most people who don't sew or quilt have no idea of the cost. Many still have the 70s conception that you sew your own things to save money. No, no, no. Now you sew for customization and quality. Oh, and family members can, not always, be the worst. Yes, I've been burned. So, and she went on to talk about how you might calculate costs and things like that. Obviously, she has thought about this and maybe done it as well. Well, she says, I did open a Shopify store, which has been a bust. But in the meantime, a locally made marketplace consignment store opened in a good area for an artsy genre, and my sales there are great. And then there's the business issue. If you're selling and making a profit, you have businesses and you are a business and businesses pay taxes. Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole thing about getting into this. I think everybody gets the idea. It's a romantic view of being your own boss and doing that. But I watched what my father struggled through when he had his own business, and it was very small. And basically, I think that contributed to his early death in many ways.
My dad had his own business in Holland, and he came to Canada and started in a factory job because he didn't want to be his own businessman. Because he said there was too many problems with customer satisfaction and everything else that you had to deal with, and taxation and all kinds of regulations and that. So,
well, here's a comment that comes from somebody we know very well, and I think she was being funny about, and this is in the same topic as starting a business. She says, "Could Walter fix my friend's coat? The arm seam has come apart."
No.
Well, okay, but on another more serious note, I just got approached by a friend of mine, asked if I could hem a pair of jeans. My first reaction was, yeah, I could hem a pair of jeans, but then they were for his father. And then I got thinking about it and thought, no, because what if I screw up? I'm not a garment sewer. I have hemmed on my sewing machine before for myself. But to do it for somebody else, I would be nervous that something would screw up. Plus, it's jean material. And so that's a thicker material. Yeah, I know. Jean needles. I have actually hemmed
I
jeans.
could probably do it, but the problem is that I'll do it for myself.
Yeah.
But, and if I screw up, I screw up.
Yeah.
But if I screw up on somebody else's pair of pants, I'd feel bad. I don't want to do that.
And what I also told this friend of mine too is, there are dry cleaning places in our area all over the place, and they all do hemming of pants. And they have the equipment and the setup, and they do it so often. They can zip through it in no time, do it right, and it's done. And it doesn't cost that much to have a pair of pants hemmed. By them. So better off. And if you do have a problem, you can go to them, not to your friend who did it out of the goodness of his or her heart kind of a deal. But isn't that the way? People hear you sew and they immediately think of, oh, well, I've got this.
I think that's why they have those t-shirts that you can buy. Yes, I sew. No, I do not hem pants.
Yeah. Because I think this is something that happens quite often with people. They hear that you can sew, that you've got a sewing machine. Immediately they have all kinds of projects they'd like you to do. Like, I just need a couple of cafe curtains. Could you just do that?
Or family members that do have a sewing machine and then come and want you to do some specialty sewing.
Yeah.
We won't name who.
No, we won't. So, just seeing here, a lot of people seem to feel that you take the fun out of your hobby if you start doing it for money. And yeah, I think you do. It sounds really great at first, but no. And then one person said, factories assemble lines sew like pants. There may be 30 parts all being worked on at the same time. Several hundred pairs went out every day. Yeah, that's sweatshop. That's how
Yeah,
they fast
uh,
manufacturing.
yeah, like one person was does one part does collars, another person does
Yeah.
sleeve cuffs, or actually they probably don't go even to that they probably one person probably just sews one part of a collar, another person sews another part of a collar, another person sews. They just zip
Yeah.
zip zip
Well,
zip through, and they do the same thing all day
that's
long.
mass production.
Yeah.
That's how it works in all factories for all things, too. That's why we have all these things we can have, that we don't live in log cabins anymore and do it with homespun. But anyways, those were just some interesting comments that I thought that generates conversation, generates food for thought. Doesn't mean
There are also comments that you get where they've viewed a video and they make a comment,
yeah.
and you don't know what the comment's pertaining
Oh, that is the most annoying. I make 5 videos. We make 5 videos a week. Okay? Do the math. 5 videos every week, 52 weeks in a year. That's over 200 videos a year I make. I can't remember from what I did yesterday, let alone what I did 2 years ago on there. And people will come up and they'll write a comment. And what happens with the comments is it is set up in such a way that the comment comes directly to my email. So it's not like I have to scour through all the comments in each video. When someone makes a comment, it's automatically sent to me by the system in that. So that's a great way to do it. And some of you may wonder how it is that I answer so quickly on some comments. Well, that's because my email is always on. And I'm never that far away from my computer. So, and I'll answer it real quick. That's just me kind of a deal. But they'll start in the middle of a sentence. They don't identify the video that they're in, and they won't necessarily write it underneath that particular video. So I can't even find it. It's on maybe something very recent, but they said, and I don't know what they're talking about.
I watched your video.
Yeah, I watched your video that you made about, and it's very vague what it is. I have no idea. You were doing this craft project. Well, my early days of YouTube, most of my stuff was about crafts and videos. So I have a lot of videos. I want what particular craft?
And they're asking you about a technique, or they're asking you about something in general, or what kind of fabric did you use?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Stuff like that, or it's so general that you can't possibly answer the question.
No, if you're going to
it's like
ask a question,
read my mind.
Yeah, if you're going to ask a question and it stems from an older video or whatever, please give me details. Give us the details. What is it you're asking? Because we have no idea. And to be honest, when I get ones like that, depending on my mood, I don't necessarily answer them. I ignore it. Because I don't know what to say. I don't know which one it is. And I'm not going to spend hours and hours hunting through literally years of videos trying to find that one particular one. And yeah, I love the ones that ask me, what was that fabric you showed last week? I don't know. I don't. I really don't. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't. I'd have to go back and review the video. So yeah. Sorry, but that's the way it is. I guess people think because you have a YouTube channel that you must have all the answers, or that you are very aware of everything you've ever said. No. No, not that way at all. So sorry about that. So anyways, I don't want to discourage you from asking us questions. If you have questions, just,
but just try and think about it and try and keep it reasonable.
Like, take into consideration what we've been saying today about that kind of thing. We want to help. We do. We really want to help you out. But
and we'll answer you if we know the answer.
Yeah.
Or we can tell you in such a way that says, like, okay, from my knowledge, I can tell you that this is the difference between, let's say, the 500 and the 550E.
Yeah.
But I'm not definitive. I'm not a dealer. I'm not somebody that manufactures them. I don't know exactly. This is just my opinion.
The teacher in me wants to help you out. And the teacher in me wants to educate you, but I can only educate you from what I already know. And I will never ever, neither one of us will ever steer you in the wrong direction. We would never say something good about a product that we haven't tried ourselves and we don't believe in. We are not sponsored by anybody, so if I talk about let's say a Rowenta iron, and I say it sucks, well, that's from my own experience. I will not say to you, oh yeah, you've got to go out and buy this product, because I won't. No, we're always very honest about it. We're always very straight up. So that's one thing we guarantee. We will not lead you down the garden path.
But on the other hand, you also have to realize that what we may like
may not be what you like.
May not be what you like. So
might not be your cup of tea, so to speak. Okay, so that's it for this week for So Chatty. I hope you got something out of it. I don't know. Maybe you didn't. Maybe we just rambled. But anyways, and yeah, I continue to put down comments as you see fit, and continue to ask questions. If you think there is something that we can help you with, then fine, by all means, we'll let you know if we can or not. And if you've got suggestions for things we can talk about here on So Chatty, we're all ears. We're always looking for ideas. Okay, so that's it. Anything you want to say?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. All right, so that's it for us today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for another episode of So Chatty. Have a good week. Say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.
Bye, all.